So we'd get, I'd buy this Cornish ice cream with these wafers. The wafers were the same shape as the slices of the ice cream once you cut it into blocks. And you'd put a wafer on either side, and then you'd eat the ice cream. So I'd go back home with the ice cream, and I'd go back home with the wafers, and I'd divvy it up and give everybody some. And it was just enough ice cream. This block of ice cream was just enough ice cream to make 6 portions. And we would sit and out on the out on the wall in the garden, or in a chair in the garden, and eat ice cream. My mum, who is Devon's nanny, her name's Norma, she at that point in time, if I was like 10, she would have been about 27, 28, and she used to play Elvis all the time, and she used to have these LPs, and she used to be playing Elvis, and we'd be sitting eating ice cream, and she'd be deciding what we were going to have for our evening meal. And she loves to garden. Ever since I can remember her, she always loved to garden. So we had, when we lived in Ringden Avenue, we had a patio, a lawn, and a little shed at the end of the lawn. She had roses, she had flower beds, she had big pots, big white pots that were on stands that had all kinds of flowers and what have you. And when she wasn't working, that's where you'd find her. You'd find her out in the garden, pottering and sitting, and sitting on a cushion, getting rid of weeds, or turning over the earth with a trowel, and just making her go, because having a pretty garden was really important to her. She always had a bird house, and we'd just be sitting out there. The boys would usually have their ice cream in front of the TV, because in the late afternoon there was all kinds of cartoons and kids programs that they used to like, and they used to sit and watch those kid programs and eat their ice cream, and I'd be out there sitting on the wall or a chair or something, talking to my mum while she was still pottering in the garden. And after we finished having our ice cream, she'd go in and she'd make orange squash, which is a fruit cordial that tastes like orange, and you add water to it, it's like a syrup. And she'd make orange squash or lemon barley water, which was mine and her favourite, and we'd sit and have a cold drink. And then as she started to make her way into the kitchen, and whilst she was in the kitchen, I'd sit at the living room for a little while and talk to the boys and find out what they'd been doing. But then I'd make my way into the kitchen and find out if she wanted some help preparing dinner. And quite often she did. So it'd be things like, preparing the vegetables, peeling potatoes, whatever it might be. She usually would make things that were, especially in the summer, just easy and quick, like new potatoes, chops, and some salad. So it wouldn't take a lot of cooking and make the house real hot, because at that point in time we did not have a air conditioning system. It wasn't usual, and we didn't have one, and we didn't even have fans. We just, if it was hot, you opened the windows, and that was it. And so she'd set up everything for dinner, fix dinner, put things in the oven to stay warm until my dad came home so that we could have dinner. She worked in the evening for an hour or so, up to 2 hours, depending on her workload. So she'd go off, and she was always going out and about on a bike, and she still has that bike. She's planted it in her garden here in the US, and prior to its life here, she used to cycle every day. Anywhere she could go by foot, she would usually go by bike, and she would go off on her bike to work, and she'd say, oh, you know, the chops are in the oven. She used to like bake them, cut them off, and she'd tell me when, or she'd put the timer on the cooker so they would cut off at a certain point in time. She'd show me all the salad stuff that she'd prepared in the fridge, and she said, oh, about around 6 o'clock put the new potatoes on, and by the time you've cooked the new potatoes I should be home and we'll have dinner around 7. So in the summer that's what we would do. Around 7 to 7:30 we'd have some dinner, and when she came home, my dad would normally be home about around 6 to 6:30, and he worked for British Rail, and the only time he was later than that was when he was working in pay offices, and then on Thursdays and Fridays he could be much later. He could be home 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, so because he was paying out wages for personnel at different locations in London, and he wouldn't get home till late. But if it was a Monday through Wednesday, then he would normally be home between 6 to 6:30, and as I say, he was working up in London. That was when I was like a teenager. If I was around 10, he would be working in the local ticket office in Paddock Wood, and he was the paymaster and ticket officer in Paddock Wood. And again, he would probably be home around 6, because he would close up the ticket office around 5:30, 5:45, and he would be home within about 10-15 minutes of that. And within about half an hour of him being home, he would sort of wash up, watch the news, put his paper beside his chair, and then as soon as Mum turned up, we'd sit around this big table, all 6 of us, and have something to eat. And meal times were very important. We weren't supposed to miss meal times. We were supposed to be home by meal times, no matter what we chose to do in our day, no matter how old we were, if we were still living at home.
Well, I have some questions for my mum. So, what was your most memorable mealtime around the table with 6 of you around it?
I suppose my most memorable meal times were holidays. So if it was Christmas, Easter, Mother's Day, Father's Day, a birthday, and their anniversary, those are the meal times I probably remember the most. Unless we'd accomplished something, or I'd accomplished something, and Nanny would do us a special dinner. Rather than go out to eat like people seem to now if you're celebrating something, or we used to before these difficult times of the coronavirus, people now seem to celebrate, or used to celebrate, by going out to dinner. And that wasn't really what we would do. I mean, occasionally we would go to this very nice Chinese restaurant in a place called Maidstone, which was a train ride away.
What was the Chinese food restaurant called?
I forget what the restaurant was called, but and I could probably look it up and probably find it at some point. But they had this really unique way of cooking, or we thought it was unique, and they would cook by the side of your table on these really hot plates. And one of the favourite things that your Uncle Eric would like, and I liked, and Papa liked, was a thing called sizzling beef. And they would actually cook it beside your table and then serve it on your plate, and you would have it with noodles or the rice and whatever else that you may have ordered. And Nanny ordered the same thing. Didn't matter if you had Chinese takeaway or you went to the restaurant. She had cashew chicken and rice and some noodles, and that was her favourite thing. She loved it very much. She's a very selective eater, and she's got a very delicate palate, and things bother her when she eats, if she eats the wrong thing. So she's very selective of what she eats. But at the Chinese restaurant, that was her go-to meal, and she really liked it. Me and Popo would have sometimes a seasoned beef, but we'd usually share a curry, and we'd have like curried beef. But an actual meal time around our table was, that I would remember, would most likely be Christmas, or a holiday. But if we take Christmas, Nanny would prepare all the vegetables the night before. So, and I would help her. We would peel big things of potatoes, because roast potatoes were a big favourite. And then carrots and Brussels sprouts, and Papa is really fond of green beans, so we always had green beans. And then she'd get up in what it would seem like the middle of night, because it was Christmas, but it was actually about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and she'd put in the turkey, and it was always an immense turkey that would just about fit the oven. And she would cook it very slowly and keep basting it, and those smells would be going through the house, and you knew it was Christmas. If you could smell the turkey, you knew it was Christmas Day, because that's what we would have on Christmas Day, rather than Thanksgiving, because we didn't really celebrate Thanksgiving as such in England, because it's an American holiday. I mean, we'd celebrate it in our home to honour Papa, but generally speaking, you know, it wasn't a big deal in Britain. So Christmas Day, smell of turkey, and she'd be cooking sausages, and she'd be cooking bacon, and the reason being is Christmas morning it was very much a tradition to get a big bread roll, and she would put like egg and bacon, or egg and sausage, and put that on a big old napkin and say, "Here, breakfast," because she was cooking so much. And we'd sit and have that, and the guys would drink milk, and I would drink tea, and I'm allergic to eggs, so I don't eat eggs, but I would have like a bacon roll or a sausage roll or whatever, and have a nice cup of tea. And then she'd put out our baby blankets, and the Christmas unwrapping of presents would begin, and someone would stand and hand out a present at a time, and you'd sit on your baby blanket, open it up and show everybody, and everybody go, "Wow," you know, "Wow, that's awesome."
Yeah.
And and it would be leading up to the Christmas dinner, because Christmas dinner was always after the Queen's speech, and Queen's speech was, if I remember correctly, was around 3 o'clock. So around 3:30 you knew you were going to have Christmas dinner, and you would have been eating, like I say, you'd start your day off with like a big crusty roll with some sort of bacon, sausage, egg and bacon, if that was your cup of tea. And then we always had these huge tins of Quality Street chocolates and Rose's chocolates. So you dive your hand in, and whatever you could pick up, like one of those mechanical grabbers, whatever amount of chocolates you could pick up, you'd sit there, stuffing your face, open presents, eating chocolate. Nobody would tell you off, because they thought, you know, it's totally awesome and completely understandable and okay. And then once you'd be sitting in your pyjamas opening presents and stuff, once everybody had opened presents and had their stockings and all that sort of thing, you'd go have showers and put some sort of clothes on that were comfortable to be indoors, and Nanny would make everybody some hot chocolate or a coffee if it was Papa. Sometimes I'd have hot chocolate, sometimes I'd have a tea, sometimes I'd have a coffee. It just depended on how old I was and what I fancied at that point in time. But the boys would always have hot chocolate, and she would put marshmallows and a big dollop of cream on top of them, and it would be like the Christmas hot chocolate, and she would get a flake which is that rippled chocolate that you like and I like. And she would give them a flake and say, and you get little, there was these little flakes that you could put in 99s, which is ice cream. And she'd give everybody a flake to put in their hot chocolate, and people would sit round, you know, the guys, all the guys, because I have 3 brothers, there's Mark, Jerome and Eric, and then there'd be Popple. And they'd all be in there watching television. There's usually some sort of movie on. So they would be sitting and watching a movie, and I'd be helping Nanny with dinner. And she would do the cooking on the whole part, and she would get me to lay the table. And I used to like to make the table look really fancy. So really pretty tablecloth, napkins, Christmas crackers. I would put little gifts on everybody's placemat. I would write their name on their little gifts so they know, you know, where to sit. Glasses for drink. Really are most pretty plates that we, because Nanny always had really pretty plates to eat off of, so I'd find the prettiest plates that she had, put them on the table, make sure that the knives, forks and spoon, all the cutlery was really nice and shiny, ready for that, you know,
etiquette.
yeah, for that big meal